Morning, everybody.
Oh.
How are we all? Can you hear me? So welcome to the Microsoft Build Expert Q&A for DevOps with myself, Abel Wang and Jessica Dean. We are not terribly familiar with this format, so what we're going to do is really make this an expert Q&A. The way it should work is that if you have a question, and I can see there's a few already, in fact there's 14, so we can probably just go straight through these, then put it up in the live event Q&A section, which is just to the right of your Teams meeting. There's also a chat. If you could just give me a little bit of an indication whether you can hear me and see that screen. This is the most useful screen you'll see, no doubt. So if you can see that and hear me fine, could you just put a little note in the meeting chat, and that would be great. That includes you and Jessica, Abel. I can see you nodding. Great, excellent.
I can hear you.
Cool. So we seem to have a few people online. It looks like just over 200 people online at the moment. So I'm just going to introduce each of the presenters. So my name's Damien. I am a cloud advocate at Microsoft. I am based in Australia at the moment. I am in Byron Bay. It is 7:05 a.m. Nice and early. My last session last night finished at about 10, so I'm a little bit weary. But I'm really looking forward to having a chat with you and answering some of these DevOps questions. I'm a cloud advocate, which means I'm not on the product team, and the same goes for Abel and Jessica. We have a really close connection with the product teams for Azure DevOps and for GitHub as well. So if you have questions and we don't know the answers, we can definitely pass that on. So I'm going to introduce Abel. Let me just make sure I can work this machine. Here's Abel. Abel, how about you tell everybody how it's going, what you're up to?
It's all good. My name is Abel.
I think you might be muted.
Are you sure I'm muted? I don't think I'm muted. Can you hear me?
No, I can see you on. I just can't hear you.
Are you sure?
Should we swap to Jess and see if you can work that out? Oh, they can hear you? Okay, all right. Everyone can hear you except me. Cool. Oh, I'll let you do that and I'll work out what's going on with mine.
All right, cool. So while Damien's trying to figure out how to get sound, my name is Abel. I'm a principal cloud advocate and also the DevOps lead here at Microsoft. I lead a team of 5 DevOps practitioners, and our sole charter is to help all of you, every one of you, get into Azure using DevOps best practices. Notice I didn't say what tooling to use because Azure is an open system. You can use any type of DevOps tooling that you want. I literally don't care, right? I love Azure DevOps, of course. I love GitHub Actions, but Azure doesn't care, which means we don't care either. Whatever your tool set is, we are here to help you get into Azure using DevOps best practices. All right, and Jessica?
Hi, everyone. My name is Jessica Dean. I'm a senior cloud advocate at Microsoft. I work for Abel and I work with Damien, and I am passionate about all things DevOps, but also all things containers. So that includes Docker, Kubernetes, Helm, Draft, pretty much anything like that, you name it. And I have a deep passion for open source. So I tend to focus a lot on how you can take technologies that you're already using, specifically open source technologies, and how you can still make sure that you're using DevOps best practices with those tools, with those technologies, and most importantly, with your team, right? With your people. That's one of the best things I love about DevOps is it starts with the people. So, and I work with some of the best, so I look forward to connecting with you and answering all your questions and making friends with even more people.
Great. Thanks, everybody. I'm kind of trying to work out how to use this little Teams thing. This is a live event, so I've got kind of control over what goes up and what goes live. So I'm fiddling around with that while I speak to you as well. So I've worked out my microphone, I've worked out the camera, and I've also worked out, thanks to somebody on the Q&A panel, that the chat is an internal thing. So asking you to reply on the chat is not going to work. But I noticed a few of you did some in the Q&A. So why don't we get right into it? There's a question, I think, that Jessica pointed out about the YAML and the classic editors. I think that's fairly close to the top. Is that, by the way, if you haven't guessed, this is going to be fairly informal. This is more of a chat, I guess, than a sitting there giving you a presentation. You've already seen the only slide I have, which is our, our names and our Twitter handles. That's a really good way of getting in contact with us, I think. So let's publish that question. Yeah, so the question is, would Microsoft ever consider adding a classic build editor for YAML files? I like having a YAML file checked into source control, but complicated multi-job builds are much harder to visualize and modify in YAML versus the classic build editor. And Jess, I think you said that you might have a pretty good answer for that. I'll pass over to you.
Yeah, I have a good answer as far as how you can use some of the tooling that you might not even be aware of. So right now, when you go into the editor from, sorry, I also hear my dog right out back and I'm very easily distracted. When you go into the editor from Azure Pipelines, and I'm assuming you're talking about the classic editor and you would do the normal visual CI and you can drag and drop kind of tasks. You actually have that when you're working within a YAML build as it is. So you can select that you want to work with YAML. It opens up the YAML editor, and I can actually do, I've been trying to find any of the loopholes for content or walkthroughs of video content that we don't have. So I can do a video on this to show you how easy it is. But once you open up the YAML editor, you just choose whatever task you want. So if that's Helm or Kubernetes or deploy to static web apps, you search for that task, you click it. On the right-hand side, you would fill in any of the key details, the resource group, the location, the subscription, and then you click add, and it'll actually drop that YAML right into your YAML file inline in your text editor. You can even sometimes take advantage of some of the continue on error or variables or other features that you might not even know the syntax for. Another great way to work with YAML editors is actually working directly within Visual Studio Code and using a YAML plugin. So and another way, by the way, because I'm thinking of 3 different ways, you can do it within the web browser, within Visual Studio Code, or you can still go into the Visual CI, add your tasks into an order that it makes sense, and then actually export over to YAML. So we do have several different ways that you can work with YAML to try to make it simpler. If there's something specific or something that hurts the most, please reach out to us and let us know, and we can definitely give that feedback to the product team.
Cool. Thank you. Abel, do you have anything to add on that one?
Yeah, ultimately, I mean, I know where everyone's going, right? We want the holy grail. We want the visual editor that there's like the two-way editing support between visual and also with the YAML itself. And that would be awesome. I know the product group is working on plugins for VS Code, and that is improving dramatically. The true two-way editor experience, that one is probably much further off. That is an extremely difficult thing to do. It seems like it would be really easy, but the edge cases are absolutely insane. So that is much further out.
Okay, great. All right, I'm going through some of the Q&A that's there. We've got almost 100 questions, which is fantastic. Apologies if we don't get to yours. I'm kind of selecting the ones that I know that we can answer. I'll try and reply to some of the ones that I know we're not the right people to answer those as well. But we'll go through. So that's cool. App Center. Anybody interested in answering at App Center? Maybe that's a question for you, Abel, even if it's just a redirect. Sure. That App Center looks to become the client-side block in the DevOps stack. Yep. What's the focus for desktop apps? When will full support for WPF, all exceptions and events be here, Mac OS, things like that?
So I know those things are coming, and I know these are actively being worked on. I don't know what the timelines are, but I can find out for you. Either Damien or just tweet at me this question so I will remember because I have a horrible memory. But if you tweet at me, I will see it and I will find the PM and get you the answer.
All right, let's look at some of the other questions. I'm just looking for the ones that have been voted up too. There's a question that's pretty popular at the moment on what the best practices or tools are for when it comes to promoting database or DB data and schema changes from dev to production.
I feel like this is something Abel would be very passionate about.
Yeah, I think so too. I might give that one to Abel again.
Sure, happy to talk about this. Yes, I am very, very passionate about this because database changes, they should be part of our pipeline as well, right? So again, the holy grail is I've got my source code checked into source control. I have my database schema that's also checked into source control so that my schema is versioned right alongside my source code, right alongside my infrastructure, right alongside my pipelines, right? And ultimately, what I want to happen is if I make a schema change, I make the change, check it into source control, and then that's when my pipeline takes over. My pipeline will take those changes to my database schema and will apply those changes into, let's say, my dev environment, QA, UAT, all the way out even into production. So there are a couple different tools that really help enable this type of pattern. One of the tools, if you happen to be using SQL Server Data Tools does this as well. Our friends from Redgate, they also have some amazing tools that go with, of course, SQL Server and also other databases as well, where they both basically do the same type of stuff, right? They encapsulate the schema, you're able to check in the schema, it tracks the changes that you make, and when you push from one environment to, or I'm sorry, when you check in your code, your pipeline will be able to take what's in source control, figure out what changes need to be applied, create that script itself, and then apply it, and it changes the database schema through your pipeline.
Okay, cool. All right, where are we up to? There's another question about the interpreter for YAML pipeline so we can debug them locally. Have you heard anything about that, Abel, just while we've got you on?
Yes, I actually have heard that, and this is coming soon. I think that's all I can say right.
Okay, coming soon is the official answer.
Yes.
Okay, cool. There are a lot of questions, so I'm kind of buried in that at the moment. There's one that keeps coming up, and it's one that is a really popular question. It's come up in a few different places, which is Azure DevOps being replaced by GitHub? Now, that it's a tough question as well because it's a perfectly reasonable question. Because there's two products essentially that are on the surface seem to be competing with each other, like CI/CD products. There's GitHub Actions, which lets you do your builds and deployments, and there's Azure Pipelines, which does your builds and deployments as well. I was moderating a session with Gopinath, who's one of the product managers or program managers, I think, on the Azure DevOps team, and he had a really good way of putting it. He was saying that Azure Pipelines is kind of your fully fledged CI/CD pipeline management thing. There's environments and checks and all of this kind of stuff that lets you build and deploy all the way from start to finish, and that's its target. GitHub Actions was originally designed as a kind of a workflow, or what's the word I'm looking for, Abel?
It's an automation workflow engine, is basically what it is.
Yeah, essentially. So it's not just a trigger on CI/CD, for CI/CD. You can trigger on pretty much any event that happens to your GitHub repository and run a workflow or run a set of tasks, a set of actions as a result of that. So it is good for CI/CD, but right now it's not. It doesn't do all of the same things. The decisions about which one you should use is kind of the decisions about which product you should use in general. If your code is in GitHub, then I would push you towards GitHub Actions. If your code is in somewhere else, then Azure DevOps is probably the right place at the moment. Stuff to add on that, Abel? I know this is a question we kind of get asked a lot.
Yeah, I get this a lot, and what I tell people is Azure DevOps is not going anywhere, right? There is always going to be a need to have DevOps features and DevOps services built directly into Azure that our end users can use, right? Especially if your code is not in GitHub, there still needs to be some type of DevOps services inside of Azure that will let you build and deploy your code into Azure. And that's what Azure DevOps is really about, right? Built-in services that can service your DevOps need. On top of that, we internally at Microsoft have so much of our stuff inside of Azure repos using Azure pipelines, right? Internally, that's what we use, and that's not going anywhere either. So Azure DevOps is not going anywhere. Now, that said, GitHub is super, super cool, right? So to me, GitHub is a premium product. There are some fantastic features. Like, I love the security features that are built into it, the credential scanning, the looking at your open source libraries, making sure they're like the latest versions. All the different security and scanning stuff that they do is absolutely amazing. And there's going to be so much more of this type of goodness added to GitHub, right? So there's a lot of benefits to moving your repos to GitHub. So if you can, if it's possible, I totally would, to take advantage of these really powerful and awesome features. GitHub Actions, they're fantastic too. Like Damien was saying, Actions is GitHub's workflow engine that lets you automate practically anything inside of GitHub, including stuff like CI/CD. At this moment, what day is today? May 20th. At May 20th, GitHub Actions, for me, has some holes in it so that I can't just automatically use Actions for all of my CD needs, right? There are things like manual gates that I really, really like from one environment to the next that become incredibly difficult to do with something like Actions. So if things like that, if there are features inside of Azure pipelines that you need, like manual approver gates or automated approval gates, or even things like being able to track your work item and saying, hey, my work item is actually in my UAT environment, right? So these are all things and features inside of Azure pipelines that you just automatically get. So those things are super important to you, and you can't get them with Actions. Why not just use GitHub as your repo and pipelines as your CI/CD, right? Because the two of them work fantastic together. And the same thing with projects and issues. Project and issues inside of GitHub, it's a way for you to track your work. It works pretty well, right? But if you really need that deep tracking where you're really running an agile project, maybe that's not enough for you. In which case, use GitHub as your repo and use Azure Boards to track all of your work, right? So the two products work incredibly well together.
Yes. Have you used? You've used a bit of Actions, haven't you?
I have. I've actually used it extensively to make some pretty large, fun Kubernetes pipelines, complete with deploying infrastructure, and then I think it was an 8 microservice deployment for Ignite-Tor. And personally, I mean, I thought it was, my own opinion, I thought it was easier writing a GitHub Actions YAML pipeline than it was writing Azure DevOps YAML. But there were certain things that were missing, like release gates and approvals and certain features like that. So Abel's right, you can leverage the two together. I do hope that Azure DevOps will actually learn from GitHub Actions and some of the YAML syntax, and vice versa. I hope that we can also take certain things from GitHub Actions. So what I really like about this story is that they're complementary, they're not competitive. And by the way, if you want to see samples of very long 500 lines, I think that's the largest one I have right now, GitHub Actions pipelines, they're on my GitHub, but it'll show you how to deploy out a Kubernetes production-based cluster with a whole bunch of fun tooling. It was a really fun pipeline to write. Fun fact about how I wrote that is I actually took anything that I would do manually and I just popped that command in using Azure command line into YAML in GitHub Actions. It was literally name the command, run, pipe, AZ command line. It was ridiculously simple.
Cool.
Maybe
so, yeah, awesome. Cool. So I guess the short answer to all of this is a lot of effort is going into GitHub Actions. GitHub Actions is easy to use. There's been a few other questions I'm seeing as well about why is all the focus on GitHub Actions, especially at this year's build? Why are there new features being announced for that, but not so much with Azure DevOps and Azure pipelines. And I think the reason is this is the place where developers are, and this is the place where the work's happening right now. So this is where new features and things are being surfaced. It's not that we're ditching Azure DevOps. We've still got a lot of investment in Azure DevOps, but that's not where the brand new shiny stuff is, and people come to build to look at the brand new shiny stuff as well. So
one comment, Damien, that I have on that, you just kind of reminded me, is Build's tagline this year was that don't worry, we'll come to you. And I think we're really embodying that by coming to where the developers are, which happens to be on GitHub. Sorry, not to be shameless plug, but I just thought that was cool. Like, we're coming to you, and then that's also where we've literally focused a lot of the content.
Yep, exactly. There are quite a lot of questions as well that are really specific that people are asking, things like, how do we do this specific scenario? And we really won't have time to get to them. We've only actually got a few minutes left. This is all our contact details as well. Twitter is the easiest way to get hold of us. My DMs are open. I don't know, Abel or Jessica's are. Abel's are open as well. So you don't have to follow us or anything to get in contact. Seriously, just open a Twitter account and ping us, and then ignore it after that. It's not a terrible thing to do, ignoring social media. We've got a few more questions. I'll see if I can pick one up. Does anybody have any recommendations for what kind of training you'd recommend for somebody who wants to understand DevOps better?
Microsoft Learn. There's a Learn course. I went and did it because I was so curious about it, and it's awesome. Oh my gosh. Abel, do you have some?
Same answer. Go to microsoft.com/learn and then search DevOps. There are all sorts of learning paths. There are learning modules. They are absolutely fantastic, right? Go complete those first. And once you've done that, when you have more questions, go to docs.microsoft.com. Once again, there, search DevOps, and you'll be able to find whatever you need from there as well. So I would start with Learn, and then I'd go on to the docs pages.
And just to put into context for Learn, there's over, not just for DevOps, but for all technologies, there's over 1,000 different modules and over 200 different learning paths. So if you're curious about DevOps and X, Y, and Z tooling or service or technology or whatever, you'll probably be able to find something to your liking there.
Cool. I'll point out as well, if you haven't seen Learn, this is what it looks like. So on my screen, by the way, Abel and Jessica, can you see that in any kind of reasonable detail? I've got my preview screen here showing it in beautiful, crisp.
I'm seeing it very pixelated.
Yeah, it's a bit fun. But go to microsoft.com/learn, and then you'll be able to see what Damon's showing crystal clear.
Awesome. It's weird. My preview is great, but the live event is not. I am in Australia though, so that's probably part of the reason for it.
Yeah, I'm blaming
Where's
all right, so,
you need it?
Yeah. Do either of you know about Azure Static Sites? Apparently, at the moment, it's only supported by GitHub Actions to deploy. My assumption would be you can absolutely deploy with Azure DevOps, but Azure pipelines, but maybe it's not a first-class citizen right now. Do you know, Abel?
Yeah, you absolutely can deploy using Azure DevOps as well. Really, at the end of the day, a static web app is, or a static website or a static web app is basically app service, right? It's app service hosting your static website. What's really kind of cool is we do all of the configuration that you need for you, right? So you don't have to set up your app service as a single page application. You don't need to set up all the Azure functions to run all of your APIs. If you set up your repo in the correct way, which is your app is sitting in the root, your API is in the API folder, all of that stuff happens just by convention. So at the end of the day, yes, we use GitHub Actions right now to, when you create your static app, to create that quote magic pipeline, right? To create that CI/CD pipeline for you, but you can absolutely do that using Azure repos as well. Or I'm sorry, Azure pipelines as well.
Okay, cool. Jess, I think you're muted.
I was on mute because I have 2 little kids that keep trying to get in my office right now, and so I was telling them they were going to be on camera if they come in. Gotta love Build from home. So I was thinking with static sites is, hold on. There's
Abel, you're going to be on camera now.
Okay.
I'm so sorry. It was an urgent question of can they have ice cream? I'm flustered now. So one thing to remember also with Azure Static Sites is it's a storage account. You're just uploading static files that's being served from a storage account. So there is Azure command line that you can use to upload those files and do a batch upload. And you can write a shell script or a PowerShell script and then drop that into Azure DevOps, which is one of the reasons it makes it super flexible. So as long as the command exists in Azure CLI, you can pretty much add that into CI/CD anywhere, even outside of Azure. If you wanted to write Groovy for some reason and use Jenkins, you could do that theoretically. Just you'd have to set up Azure CLI on your Jenkins build server.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we are very quickly running out of time. I'm going to put up that experts Q&A slide again. That's our contact details. Any other comments from either of you at the moment? And I've also been pointed out that my resolution's been really terrible the whole time. Hopefully that's just my camera and you can still read the text that's on the screen. Any other comments or places to look, Abel?
Yes, we are a resource. All three of us, actually our entire team. If you have any questions, please tweet at us, right? Don't email. Because if you email me, I'm probably not going to see it for 2 or 3 weeks because I'm super behind. But if you tweet at us, I will see that like almost instantaneously. So tweet at us individually. Like I said, my DMs are open, or just tweet it out, your questions out in the open. If you tweet at us and hashtag it LOECDA, it will literally light up a team room for us. We will see it. We will answer your questions as well. And of course, if we can't answer your questions, we will find the people at Microsoft that will answer your questions. So we are a resource. Please do use us.
There we go. Added the hashtag there as well.
Perfect.
Jess, do you have any other suggestions, places to go just before we wrap up?
No, I mean, again, just as everyone else has said, is we are a resource. Tag us online. I've had people DM me on Twitter. If Twitter is not something that you use primarily with where you're located, I also have my Instagram open. I have had people send me messages about how to do certain things there. I'm also available on LinkedIn, though I'll be honest, that's probably lower on my list of things to check. I try to answer questions that I get asked a lot in a public manner. So rather than having a one-on-one exchange, I like to have things in a public forum. So that way, if you're having the question, chances are a colleague is as well. So I'd love to answer it for everyone. And then also, if you have good ideas of content or how-tos that are missing or lacking, reach out to us. We've really been trying to ramp up digital content. I know I have, so I've been creating a lot of videos. And if there's one specific getting started, how to, interesting use case that you would like to see a video on, reach out to us and we can definitely take a look at doing that.
Great. Thank you, both of you, Abel and Jessica, and thank you as well to the 200 plus people who came and logged in. This session, as somebody pointed out, probably could have been 3 or 4 times longer. There were still 114 questions that we didn't even get to. I tried to span them as much as possible. A lot were quite specific though. If you have those specific questions, this is the way to get hold of us. We can follow them up there. One final question from Larry: were Jessica's kids allowed to have ice cream?
I said no, because if I said yes without parent supervision, they would have eaten everything. And that's way too much energy for me to handle. We also got a new puppy, so I'm running on about 4 hours of sleep that's been broken in 1 hour increments. So I cannot handle 2 kids on a gallon of ice cream. But maybe I'll be nice right now.
Awesome. All right. Thank you again, everybody. I hope this was valuable, even though we missed a lot of questions. Please follow up with us and enjoy the rest of your build event.
Yeah, let's continue this on Twitter. Send us your questions.